Is this the next owner of your business? I'm here today with Colin Price, who's a business buyer. And I'm doing this video today because as a business broker, I get asked a lot like, oh, well, Joe, who are your buyers? Like, why don't you just introduce me to your buyers? I'm like, well, I'll be working for free. But in this case, I do think it's valuable to introduce people to a great buyer that's in my network,
Yeah.
bypass me, basically, if the circumstances are right. But yeah, no, Colin, I think you're a great buyer. I think you have a lot to offer as a buyer. So I want to kind of introduce you to the world of business owners out there. But yeah, that's why we're doing this. So why don't you tell
Great.
people about yourself?
Thanks for the opportunity to speak with you today. This journey of looking for a small business to buy has been a lot of learning for me, and I find it very rewarding to talk to business owners. So, yeah, to answer the first question here, a little bit about myself. My professional career began in the military. I went to the Naval Academy and then went to flight school and spent 11 years as a Navy pilot and running maintenance, safety, and training divisions. And then you might hear like, oh, military background. How did you get interested in small business acquisitions? So a lot of that comes from my upbringing. My father
Hmm.
ran a business in our hometown for 30
Oh wow.
years. And I got to watch him and work shifts in the warehouse, create a culture with a
Yeah.
team of about 30 employees, many who felt like family. Really, all of them did. Long tenured team, provided consistent service to his customers. And I really looked up to what he was able to do, both building in the community and also providing opportunities for the team. And so I knew I wanted to get back to that after my military service.
Yeah.
Both my grandfathers were World War II veterans, and so
Yeah.
I, grew up seeing their photos on the wall and wanted to be a part of that and to serve my country, similar to the way you felt. And so that's how I kind of got interested in the small business space. I knew it was something I wanted to get back to. And in the late 2010s, my father sold his business. We as a family had a front row seat to the acquisition process. And dad was a 33-year business owner, did not do as part of his growth strategies. So he was a first time seller. Many business owners are. So there's a lot of learning for us. And I was serving in the military, so there wasn't any apparent succession plan within the family. Um, and my brother and sisters had different career paths. And so he sold the business. And that's really the first time I learned that these businesses get sold. There is someone who buys these businesses. And there's a lot of importance to who the buyer is and if they fit well with the seller. And so after my time in military service, I knew I wanted to go back and do something similar. My father cautioned me to start working in the private sector first, go back to school a little bit. I feel like I had a great experience in a leadership laboratory, but not much knowledge on the three
Yeah.
financial statements, how they interact, why cash flow is so important. And so going back into the private sector, going to business school helped me kind of shore up the areas I didn't have. And then that's what led me to kind of building enough confidence in myself that I could do transition.
Right. So what kinds of small businesses are you looking for?
Sure. So for me, I try to think of the target characteristics in a few ways. The first thing is location. For me, I live here in Middle Tennessee. My wife's family is here. Our children are here. And so we want to operate a business in the area. So for me, that's within 2 hours drive of the Nashville
Okay.
metro area. The second piece is size. I set a minimum threshold of about $500,000 of net profits on an annual basis. And then the third is really what industry does this business exist in? And so for me, I really index on a consistent history of operations. And so usually those types of businesses are service businesses. And I index on businesses that provide services that are critical, that are necessary. What does that usually play out to be? Usually the customer has some sort of physical asset, like a home, and the business provides HVAC, plumbing, electrical, some service to the home, or maybe the customer owns a commercial building and the service provides a facilities maintenance role. And it can extend into other industries that have physical assets like infrastructure, whether that be power or water
Yeah.
or energy. But that connects well with my background in the military, where we had these $40 million helicopters, expensive assets. I was leading teams of maintenance techs that were working on these expensive assets, and we were accountable to safety for performance and integrating in that fashion.
Yeah.
So those are the types of business that really get me excited. That being said, I am prioritizing location of the business. And so I've looked at other opportunities that may not be a perfect fit within those
Yeah.
categories.
No, that's a good point that you made about military equipment. It's the government's until it's like broken or missing, and then it's like, why aren't you fixing it?
Yeah.
All right, so Colin, a lot of buyers out there often ask, well, this individual, I sell to a strategic, I sell to a competitor, they know my business. What's the case for electrical power or whatever? How can you run that business? What's the case?
Yeah, I think that's a good question. And I'll start by saying um, a little bit more about my professional background.
Yeah.
So, in the military, I left after 11 years as a lieutenant commander. The most responsibility I had in terms of headcount was about 75 folks. I was responsible for their training, their safety, and some of their maintenance programs. And so, there's a lot of people leadership that I learned throughout my career. And I've had those hard conversations with individuals that are working on a performance improvement plan, or worked through staffing issues or problem solving at the lower and higher levels, and a lot of cross functional collaboration, process implementation work. And in every organization, I feel like I've focused on being a problem solver and a learner. So I think that has really prepared me for any leadership challenge that I might be faced with in a small business. And then in the private sector, that's really where I tried to shore up my background and experience in areas such as project management as it relates to
Yeah.
marketing and financial management, whether that's forecasting revenues or managing a budget. But I will address the kind of the underlying kind of piece to this is that whatever business I acquire, the owner is going to know more about that business than I will. And I think there's a level of kind of
Yeah.
competent humility that kind of accompanies that.
Even in like a competitor buying that business, the owner will always know more about that business than even a strategic or competitor, someone in that industry. Or like
Yeah.
it's a bit of a wash in that sense of like just having only one person of the three possibilities has been there for like 20, 30 years, right?
Yeah, and I would say that when I talk to business owners that are considering a transition, like for me personally, the post-sale process is important to me. And what I mean by that is a transition plan with the owner, where I have the opportunity to learn from them and learn from the team to accelerate my industry awareness in addition to the diligence process. I'm not saying that will fix industry knowledge overnight, but when I talk to owners, like that's important to me is being
Yeah.
able to learn from them to kind of build that
Yeah.
industry awareness. But I think the last piece I'll say is I am a big fan of building an advisory board, an advisory council
Mm.
into wherever I go next, whatever industry ends up being the acquisition. And so whether that's through my father and the business that he ran, or another group of partners that have extensive small business operating experience. I knew in the military, I didn't do anything in a vacuum. And I think when you're really charged with stewarding someone else's legacy, you need to build a support team around you. So one of my goals would be to really solicit advisory support ongoing to kind of balance my skill set and my knowledge.
Yeah, that's great. So I'm going to ask you as a follow-up question in a second to put a finer point on. Clearly, you're capable of running a small business regardless of industry. There are perhaps benefits to selling to you versus others. Last kind of like put a finer point on why you versus a
Okay.
strategic or a
Yeah,
private equity buyer. Because I always hear from buyers like, well, I hear private equity will just like give me all this money very quickly, and that's attractive. I think there's some drawbacks that you can
certainly.
capitalize on. But kind of going back to your capability and military experience, I just want to like, for those maybe watching, I'm a veteran as well. Just want to like put this in context here. Like, I went to officer candidate school. I was a logistics officer in the Army. I was very good at what I did. I'm very proud of it. But like, I did not go to the academy. I did not place high enough in my graduating OCS class to like get into, some other branches. In aviation, like my time in officer candidate school was like just there's not slots because it's reserved for the best of the best. So
It
like
is a
in
competitive
terms
program.
in terms of capability, like there's some qualifiers within your experience that I think everyone should know are like this guy has done like top tier stuff throughout his career so far. Just as a qualifier for
Thank you, Joe.
everybody, it's worth pointing out. I know you don't want to do it, but I'm like, well, I definitely didn't get into aviation.
Okay.
So to put a finer point on why should someone sell to you? Because there's pros and cons for everything, right? Why should someone
Yeah.
sell to you versus a strategic or a private equity buyer?
I think it comes down to ultimately the owner's priorities. And I know this is a topic of discussion
Yeah,
when you're going through this with your clients on what their priorities are.
yeah,
For me, I think I'm a great fit for someone who wants to bring in an operator who plans to work in the business day to day going forward, someone who will be working through the diligence phase alongside the owner,
yeah,
person to person, someone who's focused on a long-term hold strategy, similar to my father, where you plan to hold the business for 30 years and really invest in long-term growth strategies, whether that be people development
yeah,
or another value creation metric that isn't immediate cost cutting to return capital to investors in a
yeah,
defined period. So
yeah,
if you partner with a private equity firm or a strategic fund or even a strategic acquirer, I mean, there's an expectation that there's investors that are behind the transaction that you probably won't interact with that will seek their capital back in a 5 to 7 year period. And the function of this firm is to really grow your business. But at the end of the day, they're seeking to return capital at a specific rate as a priority for their business. It's kind of how the business model works for them. And if you're selling to a strategic acquirer, they likely are already operating in the industry, have similar product lines, and there may be some redundancies in your business in terms of staffing, which may be at risk.
yeah, yeah,
And so for me, I plan to learn from the team as much as lead the team. And I think that mentality sets me apart
yeah.
from those other acquirers out there.
Find that owners, sellers often they think, oh, like this roll up, this strategic buyer, private equity funds really are interested in me. And then they start going through the process and they start going through diligence and they realize like they're gonna gut some parts of my business. Like
Hmm.
they don't care about so and so who's been with me for 20
Yeah.
years. And for some people that's fine, right? It's like just a big payday and it works. That's great. But I think we should say it's not like you're like an impoverished buyer, right? Like you're not
Yeah.
like emptying your wallet to like make the
Yeah.
fund. So maybe you could touch upon like it's not that.
Sure. I think the market will provide feedback to valuation, and an individual buyer like me, strategic acquirer, and a private equity group will all be similar in terms of how they value the business. So I don't really think it's an issue of if I don't sell to a private equity firm, I won't make as much money. Or if I sell to a strategic firm, I can make double the amount of money or 50% more amount of money. I think my offers are in the same ballpark as these other acquirers, and it just comes back to the priorities. I would just try to lean in on what does the owner really prioritize, and then if it's a good strong business, which I know all your clients are, then the valuation will be there for the owner.
Yeah. What I will say for you is that from what I understand and what I've seen, you make very fair offers, not stingy at all. And then I do see other offers of like buyers that we think of as like, oh, they're going to have all this cash and just give it all to me. Like, at the end of the process, they end up being like, well, I'll give you half the amount that you
Yeah.
thought at the end. So, you're very much, this is what I'm going to offer. And that's
Yeah.
what I'm going for.
I think at the end of the day, everyone who's seeking to buy your business is trying to do so with financial sophistication. And so I think it's hard for any business to, one, acquire the debt to make a transaction that
Yeah.
is overpriced, or be willing to put their own equity into something at too high of a price. So I think there's commonality between all of these buyers in terms of valuation. And again, I think it comes down to the priorities that the owner has, the person they want to interact with, and I can be competitive in those aspects.
So if there's any buyers out there that are interested in selling to Colin, talking to you more, how do they bypass me and get right?
Well, one, Joe would be great to work with. So I'd
Thank you.
recommend that too. If you want to reach out directly to me, you can give me a phone call or an email. I'm happy to chat. My email is Colin, Colin, at pinebrooklegacy.com. And my website, pinebrooklegacy.com, also has a feeder for contact information. And I'd be happy to take any call and have a discussion.
Yeah.
Again, like my father's story really underpins how I approach my process to an acquisition. And even if you don't think your business would be a good match for me, but you're interested in talking to someone like Joe or myself about what options may be, how valuation is done, or what it looks like to be an entrepreneur seeking an acquisition, I love providing that perspective and getting to talk with business owners who've created something special. And I truly enjoy those types of opportunities.
Great. Well, reach out to Colin, everybody. Thanks, Colin.